ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जना शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्णा। I just came in and I'll be here today, and tomorrow half day I'll be there. So I've been told that I'll be giving 2 classes, one today, and the two topics that I would cover are the institution, or rather the importance of an institution to effectively spread Krishna consciousness over a period of time. And the other is the 4 pillars of. So today I'll briefly speak about the importance of an institution, and I'll try to present it as briefly as possible so that we can have a little time for question answers, and then we can go to lunch. I don't want to delay for you lunch too much. And this topic, the institution, the importance of an institution, I gave a seminar on that recently in the ISKCON Leadership Sangha. Did any of you take part in that class? Okay, thank you. So, even Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that institutionalized religion, yet he himself put a lot of emphasis on an institution. So much so that when he left the planet, before leaving the planet, he did not say anything about who would become his successor in Gauriya Math, or he didn't even mention who would be continuing to give initiation. Rather, he put the entire emphasis on the institution and told his disciples to continue the mission collectively through a governing body. And unfortunately, his leading disciples did not understand the importance of that instruction. Rather, soon after his disappearance, they considered, how can a religious organization be managed by a group of managers? Therefore, totally disregarding his instruction, they appointed an acharya. And when that acharya had spiritual difficulty, the structure collapsed. The Gauriya Math, which was such a vibrant organization during Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's time, during that time he had 64 temples in India. To be precise, 63 in India and 1 in Burma. Burma those days was considered to be part of India actually. So, such a vibrant institution, but soon after his disappearance, the institution collapsed. And as a result of that, preaching stopped. Although Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave sannyas to 27 disciples, none of them fell down. None of them had gross spiritual difficulties, but the preaching stopped. The sannyasis were carrying on in their own little temple. They were initiating, they were preaching, they were making devotees, but preaching stopped. Srila Prabhupada is the only one who actually understood the importance of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada always tried to cooperate with his godbrothers. And when Srila Prabhupada went to America and he had some opportunity, he found some opportunity to preach there, he actually invited his godbrothers to come and collectively work together to spread, to fulfill the dream of their spiritual master. And when Srila Prabhupada did not get any response, favorable response from them, Srila Prabhupada decided to. Initially, Srila Prabhupada wanted to work together with his godbrothers to fulfill the dream of his spiritual master and revive the spirit of Gauriya Math and collectively endeavor to. And we see when Srila Prabhupada established ISKCON, soon after that Srila Prabhupada established the governing body. Whereas incidentally, none of his other godbrothers actually thought of establishing a GBC. I mean, practically, as far as I know, all of them appointed a successor after they left. And, or rather before they left. So, now this way we can see that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur recognized the importance of an institution for continuing the mission. And not only Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, prior to him, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur saw the importance of an institution. Therefore, he gave the blueprint of that organization or the institution in the form of Namhat. Namhat was the structure that he thought of. And he didn't assume the role of the leader or the top personality of Namhat. He actually placed himself as a sweeper of Namhat. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also just considered himself as a servant of the institution. And as you know, or rather the member of the institution, and Srila Prabhupada also, he just considered himself as one of the members of the GBC. So this is how we see all three of them recognize the importance of an institution, and they gave the absolute importance to the institution, assuming a rather insignificant position. Now let us consider, why do we need an institution? Why they foresaw that the institution is needed? Because they knew that this massive propagation of Krishna consciousness over a long period of time cannot be achieved in 1 or 2 generations. Srila Prabhupada, when he went to America, he was already 70 years old. Prabhupada knew that he didn't have much time. Therefore, the first thing Prabhupada did is establish the institution so that even after his departure, the mission can continue. And to hold the institution together, there was the need of a collective concept. Why? We have seen in Gauriya Math, an Acharya is established. And when that Acharya had spiritual difficulty, the structure collapsed because the entire structure was resting upon. And another consideration is personalities like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur or Srila Prabhupada don't really come that often. These are personalities like that come once in a blue moon. They create, and to continue that wave, that awareness that they create, it is very difficult for one person to, and not only after one generation or 2 generations, to continue it for generation after generation. There is a need of a collective body. And that's why the concept of GBC was so important. And we can see how much importance Srila Prabhupada gave to the GBC, the ultimate managing authority, and that was the first consideration in his will. Now let us consider, say, Prabhupada, say let us consider Gauriya Math. If Gaudiya Math continued, Prabhupada wouldn't have created ISKCON. Prabhupada would simply be a part of the Gaudiya Math. And say, the Acharya that was appointed in Gaudiya Math, incidentally, they already split into two groups. One group appointed an Acharya and another group appointed a sort of Acharya without giving him the name of an Acharya, the head of the institution, the successor of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. But both the group actually were thinking in terms of one person succeeding Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Anyway, let's consider Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur appointed an Acharya. And the Acharya continued during his generation. Then he appointed an Acharya. That also may continue. But what is the guarantee that for generation after generations, that there won't be any fall down? And we saw what happens when that one spiritual head. Now, as I mentioned, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave sannyas to 27. None of them fell down, but the preaching stopped and the structure collapsed. Or rather, structure collapsed and that's why preaching stopped. On the other hand, in ISKCON, I'm sure all of you are aware, so many sannyasis, so many gurus had spiritual difficulties. But preaching is continuing. When Srila Prabhupada left, there were 108 temples Prabhupada established. Now we have more than 600 temples. So that shows how ISKCON's endeavor is expanding. The countries where we did not have any entrance, like the East European countries, China, those countries are becoming most vibrant in Krishna consciousness today. So these are the indication that this movement is not only alive, it's growing. And now what is the criteria for this movement's success? Because the ISKCON is still together. And ISKCON is still together because ISKCON is being managed by a collective body of devotees in the form of the GBC. Individuals had problems, gurus had problems, even GBCs had problems. But when that problem came, there was a body to deal with them. No matter how powerful that individual may have been, when one deviated spiritually, immediately the body, GBC body, reacted and did not tolerate their. And that's how the sanctity of this movement is being maintained. And ISKCON is growing. Now to hold an institution together, Srila Prabhupada established the concept of the collective concept of management. That is the GBC. But there is another criteria which Srila Prabhupada was not so emphatic, but in a way he reminded us about the importance of that. And that is his position as the founder Acharya. And these two criteria are going to hold this institution together. The institution will have a permanent head for all time. As long as ISKCON will be there, Srila Prabhupada will be there as the founder Acharya. No one will usurp that position. And the management will continue through this concept of collective management through the GBC. So, and we have seen, and now you consider generation after generations, these two factors will remain, and that's what is going to hold ISKCON together. Like, we have to, therefore, hold this institution together for the benefit of our movement, for the sake of our movement, for the sake of fulfilling the prediction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that Krishna consciousness movement would spread in every town and village all over the world. Mahaprabhu's words are not going to go in vain because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whatever he said is bound to happen. At the same time, it's not going to happen in just one generation. What Prabhupada did was a miracle, the greatest miracle that the world has ever seen, spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world in 10 years' time. But that was just the beginning. The ultimate fulfillment of that prediction, every town and village, we don't really know how many years it will take, how many generations it will take. But generation after generation, ISKCON will continue, provided we can uphold these two considerations. Prabhupada's position as the founder Acharya and the collective concept of management through the government. And if we can successfully do that, ISKCON will be there, and as long as ISKCON will remain intact, Krishna consciousness will continue to spread all over the world. So this is the gist of what I wanted to present. Now if you have any question, please feel free to ask.
Maharaj, my obeisances to you. Hare Krishna. Maharaj, in your discourse and discussion, you sufficiently explained the importance of the institution to protect ISKCON. Could you also spend a few minutes on the second important point that you stated about emphasizing on Srila Prabhupada as the founder Acharya, and how that would facilitate the sustenance of ISKCON for years and also contribute to the preaching and fulfilling Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prophecy?
Yeah, I didn't touch that topic deliberately because I was just trying to give the emphasis on the institution. Thank you for bringing it up. When we see successful spiritual organizations, we see that all these are resting on the sanctity or the unity is depending upon one person as the founder of that institution and also the Acharya of that institution. They may not have used that expression, but that is the thing. Like when you look at Judaism, it's Moses. Christianity, Jesus Christ. Islam, Muhammad. Buddhism, Lord Buddha. Generation after generations, they may have even become fragmented, like Christianity fragmented into so many different groups. But all of them accept Jesus Christ. So that's what is actually holding them together. The Christianity means Jesus Christ as the founder Acharya. Islam means Muhammad as the founder Acharya. And even later on we see that in our sampradayas also, the four Vaishnava sampradayas was revived by four stalwart acharyas. And they in their own capacity actually became the acharya. Like Sri Sampradaya Ramanujacharya, Madhva Sampradaya, Brahma Sampradaya, Madhva. So to hold this institution together, we need one permanent head. And his position will be seen as the head for as long as that institution remains. And Srila Prabhupada secured his position through his own arrangement. Prabhupada said whenever the name ISKCON comes, his name should be there as a founder. So this is how we can see that. And we also have successfully established that position of Srila Prabhupada through daily Guru Puja of Srila Prabhupada. In this way, generation after generations, devotees will see that although they will have their respective Diksha Gurus and Shiksha Gurus, but they will see Srila Prabhupada as the preeminent Acharya, preeminent spirit. And this is what is going to hold the institution together. Prabhupada even gave the example of Ramakrishna Mission. Prabhupada told us to find out how the Ramakrishna Mission is structured. Although he hated Ramakrishna and Vivekananda, but he appreciated their structure because they successfully established Ramakrishna's position. And he gave credit to Vivekananda for that. Vivekananda didn't assume the credit for himself, although he did it. Ramakrishna was practically unknown. But Vivekananda actually made Ramakrishna by making him, again, the founder Acharya. So that's why, you see, the position of the founder Acharya is very, very gathered. In this respect, a natural question comes up. Then what about some brilliant personalities that may come in future, or that may even be present now? The answer to that is, yes, they all will be there. There will be many luminaries in our institution. But they all will function under the authority of Srila Prabhupada. Just like in Christianity, we see so many luminaries. St. Francis of Assisi, St. Aquinas, brilliant personalities. But they are not obscuring Jesus' position. Rather, they are enhancing Jesus' position. And in this respect, we can consider one, the term Prabhupada. The title Prabhupada or the expression Prabhupada is very significant because it means the spiritual personality at whose feet other acharyas sit. That is Prabhupada. There will be many acharyas, many spiritual luminaries, but they all will sit. Another consideration in that respect, the other day somebody was telling me, asking me about there's so many books coming out written by contemporary devotees. And so my answer to that was, Prabhupada himself wanted his disciples to. But Srila Prabhupada's books will be the textbook or the law book for 10,000 years. On the basis of Srila Prabhupada's books, the teachings will be established. Like Bhagavatam classes in the morning will be given generations after generations on the authority of Srila Prabhupada's book. Same as with Bhagavad Gita. So that is actually securing Srila Prabhupada's preeminent position.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a little different question to ask.
Yeah.
That is about how to, in our behavior, become deinstitutionalized. Because in many a times, there is a lot of impersonalism that creeps in when we only managerially deal with devotees. And sometimes even the seminars that we attend, we hear this horrible term like human resource, where it's already dehumanization of a sensitive, conscious being, to treat them like a inanimate object. So, can you suggest us some tips about how we say that ISKCON should be like family inside and office for outsiders? Office in the sense, very professionally well managed. But when we are in the home with each other, we should really feel like we are brothers, sisters, having, parents, uncles, grandparents, like that. So can you give us some tips on how to create such a culture as leaders?
Very good.
And also still maintain the institution aspect intact?
Yeah, very good. You see, we should not mistake institution to the material concept of institution. Material concept, in simple words, the material concept or material arrangement of institution is simply designed for exploitation. Whereas spiritual concept of institution, spiritual structure of institution is to facilitate the service attitude. So we have to see that there is a difference, And in that respect, I will say, why should you only see the material aspect of institution? Why don't you see the spiritual aspect of institution? In the spiritual sky, there is a wonderful arrangement of institution. Vrindavan is perfectly structured as an institution. Where Srimati Radharani, there are two groups. Or you can say, principally there are two groups. The groups of the gopis and the groups of the cowherd boys. And the head of the groups of the gopis is Srimati Radharani. And below her there are 8 principal gopis. And then below them there are other smaller groups. And this is how it is structured. Same thing with the cowherd boys. There are groups and they're functioning. So that way we can see that it's an institution, but that institution is not for exploiting as they do in the material structure. And that's why it becomes so impersonal. Nobody wants to do it, but they're forced to do it because they can't help it. Material structure is simply based on amenities and salaries and so forth. Whereas the spiritual structure of institution is entirely voluntary, out of love, as Garuda Prabhu was pointing out, that everything is, all the relationships are actually based on bhakti. All the relationships in the spiritual organization should be based on our loving relationship. We all are related to each other with Krishna in the center. The topmost personality is Krishna, and then in our case it is Srila Prabhupada, and then Prabhupada's disciples, their groups, and in future will be subgroups and sub-subgroups, and this is how, the structure will continue. And of course, to hold the institution together, there is a need for rules and regulations. But we must understand one thing, that law, in the material platform, the law is there to curb the criminal propensities. Law is there to curb the criminal propensities. Whereas in the spiritual concept, the law is there to enhance their facility to serve the Lord. Our structure, the law should not be there to dominate and control, but it should be there just to enhance their ability to serve. Does it answer your question?
Just one more part was about what could we do as leaders to make personalism become more rampant
Wonderful.
within our institution.
Very good. Leaders in Krishna consciousness means bigger servant. Leaders are bigger servants, and the leaders have to cultivate and demonstrate that attitude. We are servants. It's a society of servants. And higher up you go, bigger of a servant you become. Although you may get the title of a master, spiritual master, but actually your role is that of a servant. Any other question?
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, sometimes we see devotees who have spent quite some years serving in ISKCON, have maybe had some bad experiences with the institution, but still they're very much loyal to Srila Prabhupada, and they want to serve, but at the same time sometimes very negative towards the institution. So sometimes we're left in a difficult position of how to encourage them and facilitate their devotional service and kind of bring them into the fold, because sometimes if we bring them in, we facilitate their devotional service, but they can also transmit their lack of faith to other devotees, which breaks down the institutional faith. So could you just give us some ideas on how we can encourage them and at the same time protect the faith of the community?
To answer the question, I'll just go back what actually happened in the past, especially after Srila Prabhupada's disappearance. Many mistakes have been. I'll be frank, you all are the leaders of you are all the leaders of ISKCON and the future hope of ISKCON. So there is no need to play, no need to hide things from you all. I'm sure you all have. If you're not aware of it, at least you should be aware of it. You see, after Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, few leading devotees assumed the role of a spiritual master. They didn't know anything better, so they simply saw how Srila Prabhupada behaved as a spiritual master, so they assumed the role. But that actually caused a lot of lot of hurt in many devotees. Like, anyway, as a result of that, many devotees left the movement. Many devotees even had been driven out of ISKCON because they didn't line up with that leadership. Over a period of time, we saw the mistake that was made and we tried to correct it. And anyway, so you see, when a mistake is made and the damage is done, it is very difficult to repair it. It takes time. Like a simple consideration, when Srila Prabhupada was in this planet, he had 5,000 initiated disciples, and there were another 2,000 to 3,000 devotees practically, joined ISKCON. They were not initiated by Srila Prabhupada. Anyway, even if we consider 5,000 initiated disciples, out of them, how many are there? How many Prabhupada disciples do you see today? Very, very few. Where are they? They left. And when you leave with a scar, it remains with you. Many of them actually started other groups and joined other organizations and so forth. And they became kind of antagonistic to ISKCON, but in a way that cannot be avoided. And of course, our door is open. ISKCON's door has always been open. Please come back. And those who are coming back, they're invited with open arms. Many of them came back just before leaving their body. And, the devotees really helped them. I mean, devotees have left the movement, disappeared for years together. Then when they were kind of, when they realized that they were about to leave their bodies, they came back to ISKCON. And they left their bodies in a remarkable way, in an amazing way, surrounded by devotees chanting the holy name. They, left the body in that spiritual atmosphere. And you can well imagine where they're going to go when one leaves this body in that way. So, you see, like damage has been done, mistakes have been made. Now our effort should be to rectify that mistake. Our endeavor should be bring them back. And especially those who can be effectively engaged in ISKCON, they should be invited and secure them in ISKCON, or at least, take care of them with an attitude of love. The prime of their youth, they have dedicated themselves. They help this movement to spread all over the world. So we owe them.
Maharaj, thank you very much. I have a question, because I'm preaching, as you know, in South Africa and in Europe also. We see, sometimes we encounter people, sometimes even groups of people, whenever they hear that we belong to an institution, they get antagonistic. They're kind of institution haters. There is a lot of that seen. So how do we present ISKCON? And we know they are looking for spirituality. That is a barrier for them.
Yeah. Well, as I was saying earlier also, that you see, their concept of institution is the material concept, institution, materialistic institution, which is actually there to exploit. Now, we should not make that mistake of, developing a culture similar to that. Rather, our attitude, we must understand what is the difference between material and spiritual. Material world is a world of exploitation. Spiritual world is the world of service. Material world is a world of exploitation. Spiritual world is a world of love. This organization, this institution is to effectively distribute love. That is what this institution stands for. And ultimately we are actually leading to the love of God. We are reminding everybody how Krishna loves them. That is what our business is. It is not so much our love to them. It is reminding them about Krishna's love for them and reminding them what a wonderful relationship they have with Krishna and situate them in that loving relationship.
Thank you, Swamiji, for all these comments and reflections. You began to speak about the value of the institution
Importance.
and the importance.
Yeah.
And to me, that reminds me of the value. I mean, look
Yeah,
where
okay.
look where we're
Sure.
sitting here.
Yeah.
This happens because of an institution. The way such festivals can come together, the way collective worship and sadhana can take place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in my experience over the years, at least not so much my experience, but the observations of others, I'm not so much experienced this, but I've noticed that the value of the institution is often, it often trumps the value of the individual. And that persons are valued more to the extent that they are connected to the institution, and that the less they're connected to the institution, they're less valued. So what I'm concerned about, and I guess my question for you is, how do we make sure that we don't just see people, see bhaktas, devotees, merely in relation to the institution? And how can we value someone truly for who they are, even despite their great prominence in the institution, or perhaps not such great prominence?
Thank you. Thank you, Garuda Prabhu. The first point that I'll make is that the difference between so-called institution and ISKCON, or a spiritual institution that ISKCON is. The basic difference is that that institution is an institution that's designed for exploitation. Whereas this is an institution that is designed to facilitate the service and relationship with Krishna. That institution is basically, since it's based on exploitation, at least we can say, instead of hatred, we can use the expression, there is lack of love. Whereas this institution is entirely based on love and truth. And ultimately the onus lies on the leaders. The leaders will have to introduce a culture, establish a culture.
So the burden resides with the leaders to make sure that we don't
Right.
turn into an institution
Exactly.
of exploitation,
Right.
and that we are an an institution that promotes bhakti.
And in our own way, we have to establish the culture of love and trust, love and care. You know, when that prevails, then everybody feels perfectly at home and willing to do whatever he can, like the way it used to be during Prabhupada's time. Once, before I met Srila Prabhupada, I asked one devotee. I was asking about Srila Prabhupada and the devotees. He told me one thing which meant a lot to me, and he told me that the devotees love Srila Prabhupada so much. They trust Srila Prabhupada so much that if Prabhupada tells them to jump from a skyscraper, they will do it without batting an eyelid. So that's the kind of confidence we had in Srila Prabhupada, because we knew he loved us. And whatever he did for us is for our benefit. Not that Prabhupada would ever ask anyone to jump from the top of a skyscraper, but the devotee's attitude was like that. He was prepared to do that. Yes, I'll do it, because Prabhupada wanted me to do that. And you have seen like what devotees did during that time. Young
much
devotees
sacrifice.
left everything, went to the
Sacrifice,
different
yeah.
corners of the world to spread the movement. Why? Because Prabhupada loved them. So ultimately, the structure will depend upon how the leaders establish it, the culture that the leaders establish.
So, I mean, if we're lacking that kind of bhakti leadership, then it can move more dangerously toward a more mundane institution.
Yeah, and at least we can start by talking. At least we can start
Yeah.
by, discussing about it and becoming aware of the importance of that. Overnight we may not be able to achieve the ultimate perfection, but at least somewhere we have to start it. And these are our future
This-
leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a motley looking crew, but I think they show promise. Yes.
Yes,
Thank you, sir.
Maharaj.
Is there any, like a minimum way how we can show one's love towards Srila Prabhupada that this movement will go on for the next 10,000 years?
Wonderful, wonderful point. This is one of the pillars that I'm going to discuss tomorrow. That is, in Prabhupada's own words, your love for me will be shown by how you cooperate with each other. So, I'll give you the background. I actually had the good fortune of hearing it from when Prabhupada mentioned once. You see, Prabhupada was very sick at that time. He was in Vrindavan. And, devotees were writing letters to Srila Prabhupada, and all those letters were so sweet. One day, one letter came. Tamal Krishna Maharaj used to read out the letters to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada used to give the points to answer. So one day there was a beautiful letter written by one devotee, He is actually telling that he wants to give his lifespan to Srila Prabhupada so that Srila Prabhupada could. And when I was sitting there, when I was listening to that, Tamal Krishna Maharaj reading, I was feeling, what a beautiful. But Prabhupada's response was, very different. Prabhupada's response, culminated into that point. Your actual love will be shown by Srila. Not just, flowery words, not just, sentimental expressions. The real love will be shown by how you cooperate with each other. And that actually shows the importance of cooperation. I tell you, in this age of Kali, it's not easy to cooperate. As a leader, you have seen, how difficult it can be to cooperate. But for the sake of our love for Srila Prabhupada, we have to do that. Because that's what is going to hold the institution together. So I think I'll end now. Thank you all very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Go
Hare Krishna.